Hey there guys, it's Celine, and by the time I'm uploading this it'll probably be Friday because I already did a Tumo thing just a while ago, so which I recorded last week even, so I haven't done all that much vlogging at the moment, but this here I find so useful that I actually want to talk about this to you and share it. And it's actually a result of, where is it got to? Oh, it's over there. Bear with. It's actually a result of reading the Self-Worth Path, where I am halfway in, as you can see. Because I was kind of, I suppose I've done this before, only it's a long time ago, and I haven't really got any, anything written down or anything from an earlier session. The point being that I wanted to have another look at what I actually do for self-care for myself. So because I think there is not enough of that kind of a vibe around really. So I thought, why not? At least I want to look at this for myself. So there's two separate kinds of parts to this activity, where I first spent quite some thinking, thinking space on, okay, so what is it exactly that I do that also gives me a self-care result, really? So there's quite a discrepancy there, and I think maybe that's another good point here that I hadn't actually written down, that I'm just coming to as I come to you here, is that you can do a lot of self-care activities because it sounds good, or because you see other people do it, or because you've done it always in this manner. But you don't necessarily always get the feeling out of it that you are looking for. So I've got and I thought that I was just having, I've split it all up in different fields of life for myself: physical activities, emotional things that I would say that connect to myself most of all, and energy work and or mind things, so down here in the middle and up here, right? And then I've got a couple of conclusions that I came to. So I'm going to just share my list of activities with you and give you my impression at this point also, because it can change, depending on all sorts of things. So the first thing I wrote down was exercise. One thing I'm doing at the moment all the time is barefoot walking in the house mainly, sometimes in my yard a bit. I do have a couple of thorny bushes out there, so I have to be a bit careful. Barefoot walking is really great for me. I want to go walking and or biking much more often than I do in this country. However, there's this however side to things for me. I've often noticed, especially during the pandemic times, that not only I wasn't allowed to go out of the house really, only for, getting necessities and things, I also stayed inside. I wanted to stay in my own space. So I just had to sacrifice the need for exercise and things up to a point, to a sense of feeling safe and secure in here. So there's a moment, of course, where I decide, okay, now I've been sitting on my butt for way too long, and I'm kind of done reflecting and reading and grumbling to myself, I have to get my ass back out there. I've had often where I chose to also another little piece as to just exercise and walking, I will often choose to go for walks with my husband in the evening. What I was going to say first was in the evening in other seasons than the month of June, July, you will have dusk in the evening a lot earlier, and you can go for a walk in the half darkness or something that I already find much more comfortable and soothing. I feel freer somehow. So there's an element of feeling free that I'm going to encounter all the time in my list here, where it is that sensation that actually gives me a self-care result, if you like. So there you go. The other thing is I will go walking with my husband so that he gets a walk as well. Because if he gets a walk, I benefit also. You know, it's like a win-win situation. So I often don't get enough exercise. I should go out more than in terms of pure physical, but I choose other ways often. In terms of body care, I do the strict necessary, you know. I do take baths, shower, you know, keep clean, use deodorant. I shave my legs and my armpits in the summertime always, you know, because I just prefer to be that way. I use deodorant, you know. I paint my toenails because I feel it makes just that much difference. I go to the hairdressers once in a blue moon and a half, you know, so as to, you know, look more or less normal. I want to look normal. So when I go out to somewhere a bit more special, I put in earrings, which I don't wear now, you know, because there's subtle bits that are enough to look civilized. If I go off to a restaurant with husband or with friends or people, I will put in earrings. I do not use makeup anymore because I can't be bothered. It's just something that it doesn't register with me. I want to have my hair clean. I want to smell nice. I want to feel clean. Those are important things. The rest of it, you know, in terms of clothes as well, this dress is totally faded. It used to be really purple. It's like a calf length, thin Indian 3 times nothing kind of dress that I actually bought in the south of France in a place where I used to go to school. So it's way sentimental, and as long as it doesn't fall to pieces, I will keep wearing it. You know, I don't care whether it has shape. I wear bras. Oh yes, there's another concession to civilization right there. I do wear bras. I have found me recently a type of bra that's made out of bamboo fiber, dark blue ones, and they don't have these metal frames because they are a nightmare, you know. So I'm ultra pleased that I actually got those for a decent price, and in my shop just around the corner here, and I bought 4 of them. I had 1 and I ordered 3 more just to be rid of the subject of the boobs bouncing around the place. That's all I care about, you know. And otherwise, in terms of clothes and things like that, I want to feel like I look more or less normal. It's good enough, you know. I've had so much stuff going on always in my brain, and I suppose maybe some of it is also a reaction to my mother, who was much more of a lady-like character, you know, on the outside, and she hid all her nightmares and her bad things inside and kept them there, and they destroyed her. So I don't care. I don't care what I look like. Yes? Okay, as long as I look like this, it's fine. So I'm just hoping that this, you know, it's do you, you know? Be you, no matter whether you're, you know, as long as you're comfortable. That's the important thing. I will do a couple of other self-care things. I mentioned the bath just now. I will do mugwort baths, which I discovered last year, actually, trying that out. And that's just excellent, where I just steep quite a handful of mugwort in a cotton bag that I've got specially reserved for that, in hot water for 10 minutes or so. And then that goes in the bath. And if my organs are all, you know, my belly, my gut is all seized up from toxins and hormonal problems, you know, that's a really good menopause exercise and PMS moment exercise also to do, to a non-exercise, an activity or a process, a way of going about things for PMS is mugwort bath and mugwort tea. excellent, and just take some rest and it'll all sort itself out. Mugwort's really your friend in those types of circumstances. And the other couple of treatment, body care things that I occasionally do is a yogurt face. So I make a mix of yogurt with honey and sometimes some citrus juice of some type or other, whether I have any in the house, lemon or lemon juice, just a couple of drops. If I want to scrub, I'll add some salt to that. Actually, the honey itself will scrub as well. I rub that all over my face and let that sit. I massage it in there just a bit more and let that sit for about 15 minutes or so, and then wash it all off with warm water and a clean towel. Get it off as clean as possible, because it will tend to stick in the corners and things. But and then I've got some rose water these days. That's actually natural rose water that I use afterwards. I've got really skin that just takes care of itself, but I do need an occasional cleanse, and the yogurt is excellent for that. And I've got yogurt in my fridge anyway, 9 times out of 10. The other self-care treatment, body care treatment that I occasionally do, maybe 3 times a year or so, is a hair oil treatment where I've made my own hair oil that contains, it's basically olive oil with neem in it, neem oil, and I brush that into my hair and let that sit for 3/4 of an hour or so, and then wash my hair out. And I use this hair oil because I'm menopausal. I have my hair is starting to get drier. I can notice that I can wash my hair fewer times during the weeks. It's like less than twice a week nowadays, whereas it used to be every other day because I had really greasy hair. So those are things where I'm noticing changes in my body and in my whole organization of my life and stuff. I have always prioritized sleep and food in my life, where I love cooking and spices and all that stuff, so I will spend money on spices, yes, always. Harvesting herbs and things like the mugwort for my bath, I harvest myself. I've done so for years on end before. I think I started doing that 20 years ago or so, because I used to use it as incense always, and because it has a grounding, for me it has a grounding effect, burning mugwort in the room like that. It relaxes me. I think sleep is absolutely sacred. I notice occasionally I don't often spend time in bed during the afternoon. Also, when it's like hot like this, it's nearly the only thing you can do. But I don't really often choose to do that. But it does benefit me, and I could do worse than spend an hour or so not to sleep, because if I have a real proper siesta, I feel bad afterwards. I don't wake up nice. So I just have to chill, just close the curtains, read a bit, or watch some YouTube or something like that. I will rather go to bed early in the evening. We're really early sleepers, always, both of us, my husband and I. And I make long nights. So that's just so important to me. I know it's always been this way. So I think those are nearly all of my physical components for self-care. I wrote down, I do a sort of magical cocoa and solitaire game with my husband in the evenings occasionally, like once or twice a week sometimes, where we just have some ambient music on or something completely relaxing or something like that, and we each play our own solitaire game here at the table, and I make cocoa and or herbal tea or hot water to go with that, with valerian in it and cardamom and things like that I learned from Joanne Harris, the author of Chocolat. So that's staying, because that really gets you really relaxed, and it's a wonderful way of just taking an hour to be together at the table here and with no telly and things like that. So the last thing that I wrote down for physical, in terms of physical things, is I don't care much for clothes, but I always look at color. Color is a huge part of my life, more than I could possibly express to you. And if I just look around me here, like at the things that are in my living room, I have a shirt there, I have a piece of clothing that I'm still supposed to be, modifying because it was too narrow for me. I have other bits of fabric and things that I knitted and whatever. It's always, always about color. I will spend 10 euros on a thrifted garment or a shirt or anything that doesn't fit me if I love the fabric and the colors of the fabric in particular. I have taken apart pants and bits and things of clothes, items of clothing that I bought in a thrift store or in a market stall, secondhand somewhere in France often, where the fabric just has something extraordinarily pretty about it. And there is like an infinity of beautiful fabric bits. My eyes are just going happy, happy, happy like that. That's more important to me than I myself know in terms of what that does for me emotionally. Because I am an artist, really. And my next chapter, so I'm going to get to this, quarter of an hour in. I don't hope to spend a quarter of an hour on each part of my self-care business here. If I look at my emotional things, that's of course the most important area, I suppose you should say, where what can you do for yourself that actually sort of transforms a bad day into a reasonable one, or something, that helps you through everything. And I agree with Lisa in her book when she says that journaling is the absolute top. You just have to. I won't know how to make it if I don't journal. I go nuts really easily. So going nuts takes the shape of my mind space getting smaller and smaller. It just gets clogged up with all the stuff. And because there's a lot of dimensions to my life, there's energy work, there's relationships, there's information, reading, and other ways of processing information. There's a high level of sensitivity to all sorts of things going on. There's the past and ancestors and bits and pieces, So what I have to do, what journaling means to me, is that I have to reclaim my life and my awareness from chaos, really. It just disintegrates it becomes a mud hole, There's no way of finding it. It becomes a complete amorphous gray lump of nothing if I don't journal enough. So I don't journal every day. Maybe 2-3 times a week is more or less normal for me. And some days I will actually sit and take more time to share with myself, my things, or to use my journal to just think about things, just like I made my whole, self-care business into this 2 pages, 3 pages story in my journal here. These are my journals. I buy these dummy books, somewhere cheap, for a couple of euros each. I always have a couple of blank ones in the house, and I just handwrite these and occasionally glue in bits of artwork, or this is just a piece of a painting that I didn't really do anything else with, and I felt it was a waste to throw away. Bits of my husband's poetry, things I printed out of the internet that are important for some reason or other. It's got to have some type of significance. They all get stuck in here, so they tend to, at the end of the road, they look like this, with bulges. Because I reorganized my bookcase upstairs, my bookcases, triple, I should say, I think I have about 30 of these at home. This may well be number 31. What is it? It says here 28, but there's a couple of little ones before I started on this type of book. And since then, I've almost always bought these red ones. Very occasionally, there's a green one or so. But this is my go-to place where I can just, get rid of everything. And I've started gluing on the front. Some because they look very similar, the front and the back. It's easy to, practical. So another emotional important point for me, other than journaling, is that I noticed this the last time I was thinking about this whole self-care business, that there's a couple of points for me that are like compass points in terms of self-care. And they're not about what it is that I'm doing. They're about how I do it. I can journal for 2 days straight and not get my mojo back out of it, If I'm just focusing on, which I won't do because that doesn't make any sense, but you could think of that, and I used to certainly do that back in the past, before I went through all my psycho travails, my things, my changes and my personal growth changes and things like that. I used to just write down whatever happened, and that's not doing it. So I have to reclaim my life, like I said, from chaos, and occasionally there is practical things that have to be sorted out first before I can make sense of whatever was happening. So I'm extremely sensitive to my husband's mood, for example. This is a practical example of how things go in this household here, which is also, there's a self-care side to this, which is why I'm telling you about this, okay? Over the past, I think, 3 weeks or a month or so, my husband and I have been planning for our summer holiday, and we will be going to the south of France, which is what we wanted, to do, because nice weather and camping and visiting places that we either know very well or haven't seen for a very long time, because I did used to live down there in some places with my mum a generation and a half ago, but it's beautiful and it's gorgeous countryside, and there's lots of things to shop and lots of beautiful hills and forests and whatever, it's just awesome. So the thing that was bothering my husband a big deal was that over the past weeks he hadn't succeeded in renting our rental car that we need in order to get there. We have tried one time to do this same adventure by train and bus, and that was not a success. I can tell you, it was pretty awful, trudging along the roads and going by taxi and what have you, and walking endless miles loaded with all our gear. No way, I'm not doing that ever again. So we need a rental car, and we have rented our rental car in the summertime from Europe Car, which is the place to go. I won't go into too much detail, it will just be boring, but he hadn't gotten, because the prices have gone up at all the renting locations, all the renting, brands, addresses, places that you can go around here, and there's plenty. The prices have gone up due to the pandemic. So we were stressing a bit. It's not like we don't have the money, but it was a bit more difficult. And it was also, what are you really willing to spend just on this, because there's also your gas for the car, and there's your campings and the food and all the rest of it. So what happens between my husband and I is that he's feeling extremely responsible for this whole situation. He wants to see it through and get it done. He was shopping around at other places because they had better prices than Europe Car, or so we thought, and not getting anything settled, not getting a car booked for us, because all the other firms wanted credit cards, which we don't have because we don't use credit cards in this country normally for everyday kinds of business. You know, you have a bank card with a bank account and that's what you use. So no credit cards. And because we have a history of bankruptcy in our past, which is by now 9 years ago, we've been in a sort of an insolvency plan kind of a situation. Maybe I'm oversharing here. I don't care. You know, it's a long time ago. That ended in 2016. However, there's a record. If you want to purchase a credit card now, let's say from October 2021 onwards, we can do that with no problems. But they keep a record 5 years after the end of your whatever it was that you had to go through, you know, with the insolvency help plan business. I'm just making up the terms because I don't know what it's called. So we still have this negative marker, you know, in the records. And if you are going to go for a credit card to get the rental car at the cheaper price, first you're going to pay for the credit card anyway. And then there's this whole issue. So my husband was in a kind of a lose-lose kind of a situation in his brain. And he tried out a couple of other options and talking to people and nothing was happening. And yesterday I just got a total tantrum because I was finally coming to the conclusion, because he's not the type of man to come out and tell me and say to me, I need my missus to sit at the table and listen to me so that we can actually, you know, have a plan of action here, because we want to go. We need this holiday really badly. And so I'm left to my own devices to figure out, to sort of smell that something's not right. And he's always very busy and he's not always home and so on and so forth. So yesterday I had my tantrum. I felt like I am going nuts here. It had been a couple of days already where I was getting more and more tense. I'd done all this healing work. All sorts of things had been going on. And so I felt like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to go to the computer and see what's happening. So I'm so relieved, because yesterday evening, after I'd done a bit more research and just gone back to Europcar and found that they actually have a different type of vehicle, which is more like a work type vehicle, a little minivan type thing, you know, that you can actually rent for a bit less money than the other ones. And it's perfect for us because I can stick all my backpacks in the back of my tent and a couple of boxes with all my tarot and journaling gear and my husband's bags of novels and crime novels that he wants to read and all the rest of it, and all my cooking gear. It all goes in the back. And it's perfect, you know. So we've got a car. We've got a rental car and we're going. So, but before I can do any self-care practice of any kind, of any nature whatsoever, I have to get this type of practical, that's why I was telling you the whole lengthy tale here, I have to get that out of the way. I will go nuts if there's something like this, something important that is around which a lot hinges for us. It is our free moment in the year, okay, where we can actually just leave the area. The house is locked up, everything's hopefully, you know, safe. Here you always have to just wait and see whether that's actually the case, but okay. The pussycat goes to the Pussycat Hotel and stays there, where she's really well taken care of, and everything's sorted, everything's taken care of. I can load up, bring my thermos, bring bottles of water, bring lunch and so on, and we're off into holiday land, you know, driving across Europe basically. And we just get enough time to be together, to enjoy ourselves, and we enjoy those trips enormously. So it's a big deal for us. It's always been a big deal in those 30 years or so that we've actually been able to plan these types of trips together. It's always been a really big deal. So I can do there's a whole lot of self-care that I can try to do, listening to types of music, sentimental old 70s and 80s music, watching animation movies, do cards, anything, you know. I'm a big fan of folk music, of European and Indian and those types of music as well. None of it will really matter. Nothing, because I'm really stress sensitive. So I always have to, we have to together, both of us. I'm pointing that way. He's not even here, but that's where he would sit if he were here, at this point. Between us, things have got to be in a state where we can actually, feel positive and feel where you're open to relaxation. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So there's another element in terms of emotional self-care that I've noticed, is that I tend to do a lot of crafting things. I make a distinction here for myself between crafting things and creative things. And of course, there's a massive grey area in between, and it would also very much depend on what you're used to or what your philosophy is in these things, whether something is part of your creative life or of a crafting type life. And I would say that a lot of the more or less creative crafting types of activities, like my candle making or incense making or energy work types of things that I do, are really rather repetitive. There's a creative element in the first approach, in the composition, in the setup of the whole thing, and then afterwards it's just getting it realized, getting it done. Just like sewing, for example, which I enjoy. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy making something, if it's not too complicated. And whereas there is a type of really creative activity where I would only place writing poetry and drawing and or painting occasionally, depending on the materials that you use, but basically drawing, where I need that just a bit more than I am getting it, and as well, a little bit goes a long way. But it means doing something that's not repetitive, something that's different, making something that really comes out of me on a emotional, personal level. Writing poetry is the best, the easiest, where I can actually, I've recently, done a couple of epic, lengthy stories done that way in Dutch, so I couldn't share them here with you necessarily. Trying to also regain balance. It's often about reclaiming my life, regaining balance, juxtaposing in poetry parts of life that are important, that are all important to me, and because I sit them together on a page, they get this, you get something visible, out of that, something that wasn't there before. So there's no crafting necessarily involved in this. There's no, little handwork bits and things. And it's much more personal. And I need more of that than I realize that I do. I tend to just go ahead with my clay and my woodwork or whatever else it is that I'm fiddling with, and my cooking and all the rest of it. Happily stitching and busy hands, and completely forget about this creative side, this really creative side, where you sit on the edge of a hill and just open your brain to the words and they come flooding in and something completely different emerges, and there's magic there as well. And that's something that I love, and it has to do with feeling free as well. So feeling free is something that is kind of intangible and magical, and it's really important to me, and it's beyond reclaiming my life from chaos and all those things. So in terms of this balance thing, I suppose that in the mind area, in the terms of the brainy activities, I go back to astrology a lot of times in order to understand people better and understand patterns and relationships better. I love reading new things and learning new things. I noticed also that I have, not that often, but I will find balance from like self-care type balance from sharing in things that have to do with ancestors. For example, on Facebook recently somebody put a friend of mine who used to be a friend like ages ago, posted about her ancestors in the war, in the Second World War, and I commented there, and I don't think she's seen it necessarily, she doesn't have to, but I feel like I do a bit of self-care in those moments where I choose to participate in something like that, in something that has to do with compassion towards ancestors. You see what I mean? That's it's a completely new type of approach for me, where I didn't grow up with that. I grew up with everybody's bad and everybody's always having problems, and it's a chore and a bore and a huge load, and you can't do nothing to help anybody. You know, that's how I grew up, really. So for me to choose to put a compassionate comment somewhere, or to put a, you know, appreciative kind of a comment somewhere, respecting people or thanking people for their input or sharing what they've shared or whatever it is, you know, that kind of thing makes quite a big difference to me in terms of self-care. Even there's kind of a self-care element in participating in something like that, if you know what I mean. So the other parts of my life that have a self-care dimension are really the most witchy path, energy work type parts of my life, where I am, you know, practicing Tumo Shakti work, practicing white light work, always. And those things are demanding. And it's really funny because they provide me with self-care, they provide me with huge amounts of strength to face up to my life in ways that I would never otherwise have thought possible, you know. But, and there's also an effect on my mood directly from doing those things, doing any of those energy practices. Often there's an element to, especially the white light work, where it has to do with getting rid of influences from outside, so invisible things that affect your mood really badly. And I can heal myself from that partly. Yet, then again, I wouldn't call that self-care necessarily, because I don't know why, you're using uncommon tools, I suppose. Feels really weird to be saying that. Let me try and think about this. It is spiritual hygiene, it is vibrational hygiene, it is crucial, but because it is Tumo or white light that I'm using, it's not personal. And I think self-care should be you using personal things and rearranging the personal things among themselves in your life for optimum result, you know, for you to feel good and you know, strong and healthy, and or whatever is possible for you. So it's supposed to be, self-care is supposed to be personal. That's why I just had to think about this for a bit. energy work doesn't really qualify, even though it does have a self-care effect. It doesn't really qualify as a self-care practice necessarily. I'm being fiddly here, being finicky, they work for me, those methods work for me, those practices, because they are impersonal, because I have access to these powers in a way. I open myself to them. So, but they're not mine, never. So, yeah. One thing I haven't mentioned so far is talking about things. So even sitting here and just exposing my whole, doing a huge big tale about all those sides to things is very helpful for me. There's been 100 times where vlogging and talking to the camera about my things has a definite self-care component in it for me, and I feel loads better after doing my video, even if there's very few views, and I still see my channel growing, slowly, inch by inch, and occasionally, okay, there could be more interaction, more comments, but it isn't even really about that often. Just having the channel and having the content and making this, talking about my life, talking about my things and all the things, is as useful as journaling often, but it doesn't stay in one place. It stays on. You have to actually rewatch your video to pick up on things again. Whereas if I write them down in my journal, I can just go back and forth between my pages and find everything, back like that. And so that's, you always need both. But there have been dozens of times where I had this huge event happen or something, and I chose to first vlog about it and then afterwards go back to my journal when I'd actually done my talkie, Talking about the things was apparently more of a, oh, wow, I'm actually doing the thing here. So I think that tends to be it. I have a birth chart myself where I don't have many planets that activate your life. So my planets are all, they're all in most of them are in harmonious positions with respect to each other. And I don't have any squares, I think, in my chart at all. What that does is it makes me less physically active. That's quite noticeable. And in order to be physically active in periods in my life when I had to be, it was that was quite hard for me. I had to sort of, I don't know, get this motivation out of somewhere. And as long as the people around me were motivated, it worked just fine. But left to my own devices, I will sit at this table and read and write and occasionally talk to you guys or listen to somebody, some of you talk to me, and I'll be fine. I'll sit on my butt and have it go through here, more or less. And it's better for me if I go out more and if I, participate in the generally having a body type of a dimension, it gotta be done anyway. Maybe this was of interest, I don't know. I think this is my self-care synopsis so far, what I've got. If I find if it's like, oh, I missed out on this really crucial possibly activity that I do and I'd just forgotten all about it, I will make a comment in the comment section down there, pin a comment in there, so as to be as complete as possible. This is my self-care style, I suppose, and I think it works. It's worked most of all realizing that there are differences in how much self-care effect I get out of my things. I can actually sit and draw or write a whole lengthy story or whatever it is and not get the self-care effect that I need. Or it's different each day. It depends on the sum total of the things that are going on. Just like with my husband and his rental car business, you know, that had to be sorted out first of all because the holiday is crucial, you know. Other things are then just sort of slide to the side because, yeah. So, and there are moods and times for everything. And I think that's really a part also of a self-care awareness, really, is that there are days that I can read this, you know, and there are days where I will just go back to my Mists of Avalon. And there are days where I'll be able to read this. And I will do the different things. I will follow my gut mainly. So I don't force myself anymore to do things that I'm not adjusted towards or aligned with at that time. So yeah, so there you go. Maybe this is useful. Thank you for watching, you guys. And, you know, I will take it down a notch in terms of video making over the summer, towards the second half of August when we will be back eventually from our trip, you know. I will, until then, I will still post occasionally when I have something to report or something to talk about. But I don't want to, you know, come out every day. And as I've said before also about my whole 2 more lesson thing, I will do 2 more lessons starting at the end of August again. And then we will start off by recapitulating, you know, and so on, for what we've done up to that point. And then get into proper 2 more, maybe, hopefully, you know, in the autumn. So there. Okay, thank you for watching again, and see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.